got, I think, I'm currently completing my 5th or 6th degree, and I still don't feel like I would consider myself academic. I was having a conversation with someone the other day who said to me that they're not academically smart. And I said, well, I'm not academically smart either. I consider myself a hard worker.
What happens when we're labelled early and actually start to believe it? In this episode, we sit down with Myfanwy Fitzpatrick, whose experience of school was shaped by actually being misunderstood. From being placed to the lowest ability table as a child to being told she'd never achieve the grades needed to move forward, Van spent years feeling like she just wasn't capable and didn't get the right support or message from those within school. Her parents are incredible and really amazing advocates. I can't reiterate that enough when you listen to this episode. But what no one realised at the time, even though her incredible parents suspected, was that she was navigating undiagnosed dyslexia and dyspraxia. What follows is a story and pathway of persistence, resilience, clarity, and yes, success. Myfanwy, or Van, went on to complete multiple degrees at university, become a teacher, and now works as a counsellor, supporting others in ways she wishes she had been supported herself. This really is a conversation about labels, persistence, our identity, and actually what happens when we mistake struggle for ability. These sort of stories and pathways were the reason that Laura and I made and created More Than a Score. So if you're a parent or a student or someone who's ever felt misunderstood, this really is a must listen. But full disclosure, we've gone back. There are some parts in the audio where it's a little bit hard to hear Myfanwy as she talks. We've done our best. Welcome to this episode of More Than a Score.
I reckon you would be all across podcasts.
No, it's my first. Is it? Yeah.
You're such a, you seem to really enjoy chat. So I've been about having you.
Oh, yeah, I do. And I was talking to my dad about it this morning. Like, my education's so ridiculous. Well, it's like perfect for the podcast.
That's what we want.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
So lovely to have you on More Than a Score. I always assume people haven't listened, so I just do my little spiel about I'm lucky enough to get to do the introductions for the people that come on. So thank you so much for sharing your pre-pod form. And I did some looking through that and then also some previous interactions and reached out. So I've got here for my little intro for you, and I can see a wry smile, so I'm excited for this one.
I'm nervous.
Supporter and helper, fascinated by people, historian turned teacher turned therapist, multi-degree student incorrectly previously labelled lazy, a hiker, a long walker, an adventurer, a deep traveller of the world, definitely mother of two, and a proud and passionate advocate for others. Myfanwy Fitzpatrick, welcome to More Than a Score.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, we nailed that introduction.
I did. And so on point with my name.
So on point.
So on point.
Absolutely. For anyone interested, you can go check out some Welsh sounds and the alphabet too to help with it. But we appreciate having you on here. Rare one. Is that right? Is that the meaning of your name?
Yeah, it's like there's no direct translation, but it's my rare one, my little one, my precious one.
Oh, okay. I love that. Well, Myfanwy, so you might be familiar with our show. So normally we start when you think back to the end of your time at school. Were you happy with your score?
With my score? Yes and no. Yes and no. I did my schooling in the UK. So we don't have a score as such, although we have GCSEs. And so we were getting graded A, B, C, D, whatever. And I had a spectrum of scores. So mine ranged from A to D, which D is not a fail, not really a pass either. So I was happy, but I was also pragmatic. Like, my Ds were in science, and I was never going to do anything scientific again. Well, at that time now I'm doing a psychology degree, so that's come back to bite me. But I was never going to do anything scientific again. I was doing arts afterwards, the histories and drama and such. So I took my Ds, which was a low pass, and ran. But I was happy with the rest of my A's and my B's.
So quite a spectrum. So at the end of year 12, so some A's, B's, and then D's. And did you do a range of different subjects? Because in England, you have to do quite a small number, right, at the school?
We do A on my GCSEs. So I'll tell you. So I got A in drama, B in music, B in RE, B in English again, so you do double English, C in French, C in maths, and then must be, unless I've missed two, and then D science, so 9 GCSEs.
Wow, and that's before you go on to A-levels, and you can either get to the next step. So that would be the equivalent to about 15, 16 of this.
I was 16. I turned 16 in May. Yeah. So, and with our school year, September to September. So, yeah, I turned 16 in May and I was doing my exams. So I did my exams when I was 15 and then your exams finished in June.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so then you go on to your A-levels where you only do 4 subjects and then you drop one after the first year. So I can't even remember what I did now. I think I did history, drama, politics, and English. And then I think I dropped English on the 3rd year. So yeah, and then I was happy with my scores, but they were very average. I really, really, really struggled with my A-levels much more than my GCSEs. A-levels were a huge, huge jump for me academically. And I wasn't diagnosed as dyslexic at that point, and I just couldn't cope, and constantly called in by the teachers. They wanted me to drop out. Because at that stage you could just drop out and go and get a job, and they just didn't really have any faith that I could achieve what needed to be achieved. And my parents pushed because my mum was quite forward thinking, and she was like, A-levels different to a university degree. If you can just get through, just scrape through with average grades, which I did in the end, I think just got C's, you can get to university, which I did, and then my academic life started, really. But it was a real slog for 2 years, really not my confidence. I didn't really like talking about it. Feels like such a dark period in my life, which is strange to say about 16 to 18, but it really kind of made me, I think, have very low self-confidence in what I was capable of and something I'd still carry.
Yeah. Well, you said the 3 words when we asked you to describe education. You said hard, embarrassing, and painful, and the word shame and shameful came up a few times when you were recounting your education. You still hold that?
Oh, 100%, yeah. Yeah, I don't feel good enough I feel like a fraud most of the time.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous what I've got. I think I'm currently completing my 5th or 6th degree, and I still don't feel like I would consider myself academic. I was having a conversation with someone the other day who said to me that they're not academically smart. And I said, well, I'm not academically smart either. And I thought about it after and thought, well, what does... And I don't consider myself academically smart. I consider myself a hard worker. And that's the difference, I think. But what is academically smart? Someone who can excel in academics. I've got 2 master's degrees. I'd say that's pretty...
Yeah.
I'd say if you looked at when they have like the outline of like academic standards, a master's degree is like pretty high up there to be able to pass that and actually achieve and get that too. It was interesting reading your one because I had a really close friend of mine who completely bombed school, just never felt connected and never saw himself as academic. And he's gone on and got like an MBA completely now because he found his thing as well. But I was interested because the reason I've been excited about having you on is there's so many people that go through not getting the right support from their school. And you even just said the comment then like, they didn't have faith in me. What were like the things that when you think back, like those indicators that you felt like others didn't have support? Because looking at the pathway you've created, you seem to be someone now that is constantly putting faith in others and helping others and supporting them. So I'm interested to know, what were the tells that you felt like you were getting?
There were so many. It started really young. I would say my first proper memory was being shouted at. I was year 1 and I remember asking my teacher, Mrs. Field, and I must have been 6 or something, 5 or 6, asking my teacher how to spell my dad's name. And I remember standing up and she went on and on that she just couldn't believe I couldn't spell my dad's name. And I remember feeling like really humiliated. So that was the first one. I mean, me as a teacher, if a child asked me how to spell something, I would say Philip, and I just spell it or help them look it up. I wouldn't ridicule. I guess that was the 90s and it's a different time, I get it. But that was the first. And then later on in primary school, they differentiated the class. And I laugh about it now. Something I dine out on because, you've got to laugh about these things. But it's something that really hurt me at the time. And they differentiated the abilities in the class. And they gave each table a name. And all of my friends, I was a girl, I am a girl, all of my friends were girls and they all, typical girls, like do well, sat down, did what I need to do. They were all on one table doing the work, and that table was called the Pirates. And I was on the table with all like the naughty boys, me and all the naughty boys. You're aware at that age when you're like 10.
Yeah, of course you are.
Years. I was on that table, and that table was called the Snails. And that's something that me and my friends, we all went to school together, and they all know. And that's a story that they would laugh about and we would laugh about, because I had no other way to handle it rather than and I tell that story, I'd get that out, and I put that out there as, I think, a defense mechanism. But talking about it now, I feel a bit teary. It was so hurtful. And that teacher, Mrs. Lynch, she was a fantastic teacher, and she really worked hard for me, and she did go above and beyond a lot for me. And I would assume that was just an oversight on her part, and I don't think she'd even remember. But that's something that stuck with me, being labelled, I guess, as slow.
Yeah.
That was in primary school. I'm sure there were countless others. And then secondary school was just a dumpster fire, really. Like, there was no real support apart from every parent's, even I can tell you the feedback, every parent's even on the phone to my parents. She's really intelligent, but she can't do the work. She must be lazy. She's not applying herself. So that was the only feedback I got. My parents were good and supportive, and they got me like extra time in exams because they could see there was a processing issue. But my brother and sister are dyslexic, and my dyslexia presents very differently to their dyslexia. I could read at a really high level. I still can. I read really fast, very articulate. I don't get confused with my words generally, which was different to other types of dyslexia my parents were aware of. So my parents just thought, well, maybe she's got a little bit of a learning difficulty, but she's probably just lazy. Not that my parents thought I was saying that. They were taking advice, she just needs to work harder. She just needs to work harder. And I remember sitting in every parents teacher meeting thinking, like, I just got to work harder. I don't know how. Like, I thought I am. And nobody ever took the time to sit down and show me how to study or what I need to do or what work harder looks like. And that has impacted me immensely. So I am now a massive workaholic. I do work every hour that God says. I do take on, since I've been in Australia 4 years, and I've already done one master's degree, and now I'm doing a second degree. When I did my first master's, I did it full time in the evenings, and I worked full time during the day. So that's the only way I know how to be successful, is to work harder. So in some ways it's been good, but it's also put some immense amount of pressure on me.
When you said the words work harder, our wonderful listeners can't see, but you did the air quotes.
Yeah.
Even when you were just describing that then. Now, what does work harder mean? Because it sounds like it's gone through a bit of a change, but you've also got a pattern that you have for how you work harder. What does work harder look like?
That's a really good question. I don't think I actually figured it out yet. These are realizations I made to myself recently. Like, I don't know. I only have one speed, and that's fast. Like, I talk fast, I am fast, but I'm fast. Work harder for me is driven by fear. If I don't work hard, I won't achieve, because if I don't work hard, you'll achieve. So if I don't give it 110, if I don't book 15 clients in a day, then that's not working hard enough. That's a spare hour that you could be doing it. You're going to fail. You'll let everyone down again. You'll be sat in that teacher-parent meeting being told how lazy you are.
It's so powerful. So I think it was Mrs. Lynch who said, like, there's certain things that happen that we then just carry with ourselves, and that's what you're talking about. And so when you think back to the end of your time at school, you're getting all these signals that maybe you had to work hard. And I'm putting that in air quotes now because we don't really know what that means. But you're getting these signals that you could do really well, but there were some things that you weren't sure about. But yet throughout all of that, you just kept persisting and kept wanting to do the work. So it sounds like you're pushing back against all those signals. Knowing yourself now, like, what is it that motivates you? You sort of touched on it a little bit, but what are the things that motivate you to keep pushing back? Because it sounds like you had all these people sort of like blockers and things getting in the way, but you just kept...
I did have blockers, but I don't think I'm selling it fairly. I also had my mum and dad who never made me feel lazy and did try and help as much as they could. Obviously, they weren't educated as they were, and they were really supportive. So I was coming up against blocks, but that was kind of helpful and unhelpful in a way as well, because I was coming up against blocks in school, but also having all this positivity at home, hyping me up, believing I could do it. But obviously there was a disconnect in how we would get there. And I think the only way that we were really doing was working hard. So I was working in the wrong way. Like, I remember studying and revising, and it just kind of doing a lot of it, but not really very effective, not really.
Yeah, help the listener, because I think this is a key thing. I've heard Laura talk about study habits and things like that, and even your own experience, Loz, when you went through year 12 versus your older sister. Just help the listener picture so they can get clear. When you say they're not effective habits, like study habits, what did the melt sound really silly? But like, what did you think you were doing that was studying, but now you're like, oh, that's actually not effective?
Well, just reading notes, not actually kind of, it's only when I became a teacher and I learned how to study it was how I understood. So just reading, I remember like, this is ridiculous, but obviously I went to a convent school, which is, my headmistress was a nun, so it was a very religious school, and we had to do a GCSE in religious education, and part of that religious education is you have to study St. Mark's Gospel? Yeah, St. Mark's. I just remember reading the Bible. I remember sitting in my room.
I've got this now. I've read it.
Hey,
I know it.
It actually worked. I got a B. But that worked well because part of that was just had to retell Bible stories. So I was all over that because that's, that part of my dyslexia is I remember everything anyone's ever said to me. Like, I can remember what you said to me on Tuesday last year, So I read the Bible and remember it. But that was only one very specific skill. Like when you do history, like, you have to analyze it. You have to, give your own ideas. That's when I started to fall down a bit, and you can't really work hard through that. But I had them all in my head and through discussion, but I had a processing issue.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting that you had two older siblings who went before you who were diagnosed with dyslexia. So this is not like a foreign idea concept in your family. However, because you presented so differently, it wasn't picked up. And I think that's a really important message for parents, that these neurodiversities do actually present in varied ways. And just because you presented one way didn't mean that wasn't technically going to be the diagnosis. I think it's a really interesting message, because it's not like you were the first.
No, I was the third. I also don't think my mum really wanted to accept that I was dyslexic. I think she kind of, because I was so articulate. And also my parents are great. They're very supportive of their kids, and they see their kids on like this. I would say, like, I laugh about my dad to it, but they see their kids. So I think my mum was quite impressed that I was so articulate. And like, the story in my family is that my family started speaking at 9 months, and so I don't think mum could really accept it. And I actually spoke to my dad about this morning, and I was asked him permission to say this. But both of my parents expressed to me one of their biggest regrets is not pushing for a diagnosis for me, because I didn't get it until I was 25.
Yeah. Once you got the diagnosis, because you said in your pre-pod, academia was always a struggle until a diagnosis, and then I got the help that I needed. I'd love to know what the help you needed was. What did you get after that diagnosis that helped ease the struggle for you?
Well, on the practical sense, why I got diagnosed really was because the way when I became a teacher, so I passed so we do it differently in the UK. Again, you don't do a teaching degree as such. You don't do like a 3-4 year teaching degree. You do a standard degree. I did it in history, and then you go and do what's called a PGCE, which is the postgraduate certificate.
I did something similar. You used to call it a DipEd.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that, and so past that, all good, great, ready to get my job. But you couldn't get qualified teacher status, which is the same as like fit for registration, I guess, without passing these 2 skills tests. Again, sorry, air quotes, because I don't know why a history teacher needed to have a skills test in maths. But anyway, the government thought that was a great idea. And I passed the English, bit of a struggle, but I passed the English. You get 3 attempts, and I couldn't pass the maths. And I'd done 3 attempts, and I failed the maths, and that's basic.
Oh, that would rule you out from being able to become a teacher.
Yeah, and so I got the diagnosis, and then my parents employed a employment lawyer who wrote to, effectively, I guess, the government, and said, she needs another chance. She wasn't diagnosed. This is unfair. And they gave me another chance to do the test again. So I got more extra time, I should say. So that and practicalities. But in terms of like a wider spectrum after that, I got this. Well, I was kinder to myself. It wasn't just, oh, you're lazy. So I started to see myself a bit differently. I had a bit more self-compassion, a bit more understanding, and that released some pressure for me on the way I worked. And then I started, because I was already a teacher, I started researching dyslexia and how dyslexic children learn the best, and then I started teaching myself that way. So I didn't really get the support. I gave myself the support because I was pretty vibe at that point,
Yeah.
You've got to say it yourself, So.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this off mic before about, when I completed my education year, which is crazy, isn't it? To have 1 year and to be in a classroom educating. We did nothing on neurodivergence. We did nothing on really additional needs support. And I had to learn in my 17 years in the classroom almost with the kids. People would come in and say, my student needs this. I'd have to learn what that was And it's just, you kind of assume educators have all of, and unfortunately, unless you do your own research, put yourself through some of your own programs, ask to do certain PDs, it isn't a given that educators actually have all the tools that each child might need. And we're moving into such a complex time now where there is so much more diagnoses, and we need to be able to handle it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I worked at Holy Family in Walthamstow in London for, I don't know, must be 10 years, maybe 9 years. And I was really lucky in that school in the sense I had 2 heads of departments while I was there. And they were both super supportive of me and my dyslexia, and me branching out with what I tried to do is I gave trainings when I was there in the school of how to teach dyslexic children. And like the school were really, really they wanted to learn. They were great. Once I started knowing and putting myself out there, I mean, like the history department did an initiative of basically changing all the, I don't know if they've still got it now, but they're changing all the PowerPoints to dyslexia friendly font. And they listened and they ran with that. And that was great. Hearing people listen to what I have to say and then implementing it, that gave me a massive confidence boost. And also made me feel really proud that, maybe if someone had done that for me, I perhaps wouldn't have struggled to read the board or to understand and stuff. So that felt really good. So I put that down to the support at Holy Family.
Yeah, and lived experience is really important. I think it's one thing to come and listen to somebody who has a skill in something. It's another to hear somebody have the lived experience you're having, because it just creates that more validity, I suppose, to what's being said. So it's great.
Yeah.
What are some fonts that are dyslexic friendly? Because we
can look them up too.
Yeah.
Well, it's not so much anything it's more that, I mean, obviously Comic Sans is a great one because it's a bit easier to read. But the more important thing is never do anything yellow and red. We can't read that. You want pastel backgrounds, all pastel backgrounds.
Light blue is always what I was told.
Light blue, peach, anything anything that's just easier. Never anything I think
that's competing in.
So competing, yeah, because that's just too much for the brain. And interesting fact for you: if non-neurodiverse children or non-dyslexic children can learn in a dyslexic way, but dyslexic children can't learn in a non-dyslexic way. So why can't we just teach everybody in a dyslexia-friendly way?
Yeah, I think there's some things happening. I can only talk from a Victorian context. So here in Australia, they're trying to do what they'd say is universal practices. So if we know it works for all, then you make those adjustments and then all the kids can actually do it. I'm really interested around, so thinking of you've set the scene where you're getting these signals, you sort of had a mixed response to the way that school finished up. You still went then on to A-level. So what I've learned about the UK context, so when 15, 16, year end of year 10, let's say, I get the choice of some different pathways. You've then chosen to go down A-levels to pursue to finish up high school before you then go on to university. You're getting these signals and incorrectly told things or labels, but then you still continue to work. You go through to university, you complete your A-levels, but you struggled, but you still continue to work hard. You then go to university, get a degree in Irish history, then get a master's in British history, then move on to complete teacher training, where you then teach for 12 years. At the same time, during that time, you get diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia. You then decide to move to a really great country called Australia, continuing on with the education and the intelligence and the understanding of you're this hard worker, get a master's in counselling, start your own counselling business, and then just to add on to this too, a graduate diploma in psychology that you're currently pursuing.
Yeah.
So I'm interested around listening to all of that, right? The fact that you doesn't sound like something a lazy person would do. I'd just say that too. But you said something really powerful. Intelligence isn't the grade you get. So what does intelligence mean to you now?
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, it's funny listening to that list of accolades, I guess. Education, I don't think academia is intelligence at all. I really don't. I don't put any... It works for me and it's good for me, but I don't put too much heed on academia, if that makes sense. And I don't see that as what an intelligent person is. Intelligence is just, for me, emotional intelligence, knowing about the world, but even not knowing everything about the world, being interested, being curious, you might be like, oh, I don't know what's going on I don't know what's going on around, but I'd like to learn about it. You don't have to know every detail and every little, nuance, but just being more aware of outside of yourself, knowing that you're not the world, that we're not the only thing that matters, that to me is intelligence, being curious, wanting to learn, and also being able to look stuff up. Like, really bugs me the idea of spelling tests in school. When I was a teacher, we used to have to do spelling tests as some sort of initiative, but I would not grade them. I was really like blunt with the class. I'm like, look, what's the only thing that spelling tests is your memory. You can look it up. And so I used to spend the time teaching them we don't really use dictionaries anymore, but I used to spend the time teaching them how to use a dictionary, how to have a proper life skill rather than an arbitrary memory test. That to me is intelligence. Being like, oh, I don't know this thing, I'm going to look it up and find out about it. That's intelligence rather than just being someone who knows.
Yeah. The different levels instead of just being able to recall something or a fact.
And I feel a lot of education is just a lot about recalling.
Yeah, there's so many different kinds of knowledge and intelligence.
But I think that comes down to assessment, right? If we're really considering academia in terms of how we measure it, that's a big issue. Because as you said, you're getting the feedback at school, she's highly intelligent, but she's lazy and she can't create the work we need her to create. But clearly you were demonstrating intelligence, probably verbally. So if we could assess you verbally, actually probably a lot of this rhetoric you were getting would never have landed, but we didn't change some of the assessment.
That's 100%. Like my mum and dad used to say that all the time. If she could just be, not to the teachers, they'd say it in like conversations with dinner parties, whatever, but parents typically middle class, like discussing the things around the dinner table with friends. If she could be assessed, I remember hearing, if she could be assessed verbally, if you could be assessed verbally, you would be, straight A. That's just, so they knew. I think they must have known a little bit of a processing issue. But yeah, you're right. But I can't ever see a world where people are assessed verbally. I just don't. I don't think I'll ever be invited.
Oh, see, that's so funny because I had some experiences. I had some kids that I taught and there was like writing mechanics issues. So they couldn't just holding the pens was really tricky for them. We had some dyslexic kids. And I remember a unit where we'll focus on storytelling and creating really engaging narratives. So I gave them the option to actually create a recorded oral story, so a narrative. So still follow the same structure, whatever sort of assessment you want. What I was interested in, can you actually create it so it's engaging and makes people want to listen, thinking thoughtfully about the words. This boy, Declan, created this amazing story and no one had ever heard him tell a story like that. And they were listening to it. And his mum, I remember, broke down in tears because she was like, he wrote this. Sorry, I was like, well, he didn't write it, but what he did was we captured ideas. He would dictate it onto a tablet and then we played it back and then he created it all. Incredible. And for that whole time he thought, I'm done, I can't do this. It was so amazing to see, right? The great use of technology.
And the irony is, how do we consume things currently? It's not just the written word anymore. We're listening to audiobooks, we're watching short videos, people are creating content in such varied ways. And yet we're still only looking at the written word. I mean, I'm an English teacher. I love writing. I love all of that. But it's not for everybody. And I actually think that there's so much content out there that we are consuming in such varied ways. Why wouldn't we accept it as a way of communication? I think the trouble is when you get to that pointy end where it's all about consistent marking and ensuring that everything's kind of able to be replicated. That's where the tricky part is. I'm with you in terms of how we shift that. But I have hope that it will shift. I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have hope, but I didn't realise I was such a cynic about it. But sitting here talking to you today, I think I'm really negative about education, which is really funny for me. It must be my own stuff, but I am very negative about education.
Yeah, but it seems based on the stories that have been dumped on you to a degree. That's hard to sort of unshuckle from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we jump into the shift towards the counselling, this was one of the questions I had was, so given your experience in school and what you went through, you then went through and became a teacher and worked as a teacher for 12 years. What's the reason for moving into education? What was that reason for you wanting to show up every day and teach kids?
I think I learned pretty quick that I didn't want to do that.
Next question, right?
Yeah, no, I did. I liked it. I did it. I really so I think I wanted to be someone that I didn't have. I think that's amazing. And to an extent, I was someone that I didn't have for the kids. I'm really proud of a couple of things I did when I was at Herded Family. One of them was, you've got to understand, it's very different to where I was teaching and living in London. Well, not living there, but where I was teaching. is very, very different to perhaps what your experience of life would be, unless you've kind of gone and lived in, I mean, I was in Walthamstow, and lots of the kids were living in extreme poverty, not just like a little bit of struggles, like extreme poverty. And we had my school, we had a really high number of gang members, and these boys were there's a thing called the county lines in the UK, where it's basically children are kind of kidnapped by their these local drug dealers, are taken to drug dens, and they're made to like pack drugs. That was quite rife for students happening in my school. Like, so it's not just like a little bit dodgy, like it was like real poverty. And so I knew someone, this is my proudest teaching moment, probably why I went into it. I knew someone who had gone to my school. So he worked for my parents. He's a really great guy. Worked for my parents. He went to the school that I taught at, like years gone by. He ended up having a bit of trick past him, ended up in prison, and then he got out of prison and kind of sorted his life out, became an electrician, started working for my parents. I got him to come in and speak to the year 10 students about his experience growing up in Walthamstow, what he did, talking about going to prison, how he got there, and basically how you don't need to go down that path. And that was he ended up speaking to him for like 2 hours. That was one of the best things I'd ever done or been involved in, because it really made an impact to the kids. I knew I was from a different demographic to the children. Most of the demographic was, African immigrants. I'm quite middle class, white. I knew that me standing up and preaching about not doing drugs or getting involved in the drug trade is not pretty. I'm from such a different removed world. It wasn't going to have an impact. They really respected Aaron, and having him come in and talk, that was one of the best moments. And that's why I wanted to get into teaching, to actually help the children.
So talk to us then. So you worked in there, you were wanting to support kids, you were working in some low SES settings, and then after 12 years, there's a shift that happens after your time as being a teacher, you're doing your study, and now you're shifting into counselling and therapist. Talk us through
what happened.
Yeah, what was the stimulus for, I guess, shifting? Or what was that moment? Is there something, because the fact that you laughed and just looked up there, there's probably a specific moment where you were like, oh, this is the thing I'm going to do.
Well, before I left London, I became friends with this woman who's a psychologist, and I had got talking to her a fair bit about it, and I was really interested in her work, and she was kind of encouraging me to get into psychology before I left London. And I really respect her, and, so it was in the back of my mind. And when I left London, I was in a position when I came to Melbourne for the first time ever that I didn't need to work. So I had a bit of freedom, and I was like pretty burnt out from teaching. So I was like, right, I'm going to get a step. So we arrived in August 2022. I was a stay-at-home mum. My husband had to finish up work in London, so he stayed in London. So I was out there for 5 months by myself. And Morgan was not in prep yet, and Killian was only 2. So I was home with the 2 boys. Morgan wasn't diagnosed as neurodiverse then. Home with the 2 boys, and I lasted as a stay-at-home mom for, I guess, 8 weeks. I was like, no, it's not for me. No way. It was just, I was kind of going a bit insane. I love my children, I want to be there for my children, but I was going insane because I think I've always been on this Ferris wheel of doing things, and just the slowness of the day, I couldn't do it. And so on a whim one day, I Googled like counselling degrees, and then University of Canberra called me. And then I kind of ended up signing up. It was literally like that. There was no, but that's very me. I kind of want to do this. Maybe I'll go out on my own at Essie, and then I'll text Stacey, and I'm starting there next Monday. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how.
Yeah, but you'd had years before someone talking to you, planting a seed, and then
6 months before. It really wasn't that long. It really wasn't. I kind of like, and then I was like, okay, so doing this counselling degree. Do I like it? Yeah, I do quite like it. Oh, this is good. I really like this. Okay, great. And then I came out and I applied for a job at Ali Space in Mornington and went in straight into private practice, which is slightly unusual. You usually kind of qualify and like work in a system for a while. And then I was at Ali Space for a year, and now I'm by myself. So I know I can see it. I'm still on the Ferris wheel. I'm still on the work hard, do it, go gung-ho. I just don't know how not to be.
What do you think it was that you were demonstrating that your friend said that 6 months before you really should look into counselling? What is it? What's perhaps the natural talent that you have that she saw in you?
I don't know. Lots of people tell me stuff. Like, everyone tells me everything. I seem to be with my friends. Like, I have lots of my friends. I would say I'm their confidant. I think it's just that I've never really liked to talk about myself. I know this is fine, but not like I don't like to talk about myself. Like, I like to talk about myself if I'm in control of the narrative. Like, I'm probably finding this a little bit uncomfortable talking about education. I like it if I'm in control of the narrative. So I will tell the stories, like, for example, the snail story, because I'm in control of that. One of my massive defense mechanisms is I ask a lot of questions because I like to cover up my nervousness. So I know a lot about people because I ask questions. I mean, like my uni friends, they said, what did they say the other day? Like, oh, Arthur, it's like the Spanish Inquisition. But people, I figured out a long time ago, it's for a successful conversation. People love to talk about themselves. So if I can get people to talk about themselves, I don't need to talk because they might ask me stuff I don't want to answer.
But you must be also approachable too, because there's a difference between someone that's just asking questions versus someone also you actually see like listening, you hearing as well. So is that part of the...
I think so, yeah. I'm quite personal. I'm good with people. I like people. I'm interested. I genuinely want to help. I mean, a lot of my clients, the feedback I've got is that I go above and beyond. And I don't know if that's just me personally or again, if that's me and my like just worker bee attitude. But yeah, I would say I'm personable. I like a chat. I'm generally interested. I'm not just asking questions to fill a void. I do like to know. And you know, and I don't, you know, I wouldn't pry necessarily, but I'd be like, oh, where did you go to school and what do you do? And oh yeah, do you like it? You know, like there's a follow-up rather than, so yeah, I would say it's very hard for me to talk about myself like this, but yeah, I would say I'm engaging and good with people.
There has to be an element of safety though, for people to open up in vulnerable ways to you. How do you think you create an environment of safety for people?
That's a good question. It's really hard for me to explain. It's not something that I know how to teach. You just, maybe it's just in me. Like, it's, you know, actually, no, that's rubbish. I don't know why I say it. Because my parents are hugely supportive, hugely empathetic, non-judgmental. And when that's mirrored, that's kind of who you are. I mean, I like to think that when my friends tell me things or my children tell me things or whatever, that, you know, I never, actually, one of my other friends in London, it was three of us having a conversation. So it was me, Laura, and Sam, the psychologist. And Laura put it to Sam saying to me, you should go into counselling, blah, blah, blah. And Laura said, yeah, because whenever I tell you anything, you don't react. You just listen. You don't go, oh my God. You don't react. You just take it on board and then you might say something after that. And that really stuck with me because I didn't know that I was doing that. But I like to make sure I don't, you know, judge people, say something that's going to be harmful to them.
That's interesting because so some of the time, previous experience that you said where people would say incorrect things, whereas now you're sort of mindful of not just jumping in and putting on labels or sharing certain things. You're mindful of just listening and finding out their experience.
It's probably why I probably have been hurt so many times. And so many, like, we've just scratched the surface. So many stories from my school days, like bigger ones than that I haven't even gone into. And I think I've been hurt so many times, and what I've learned from that, because I'm dyslexic, we're very good at spotting patterns. So if you open your mouth too fast, you can hurt someone. So maybe that's something that I've learned from it.
Yeah. So what else have you discovered? So you've made this move and with your pathway, so you've gone from really people-focused work as a teacher to really people-focused work as a counsellor and a therapist. What are the key things that you've discovered in this work? Like the key skills, the key techniques, things that you're discovering in this work? Because the people that are listening and what we're hearing a lot about is communication skills are really critical, things like that. But just the fact that you're working with people, you're working on building trust and stuff. What are your key skills and discoveries from this work so far?
I mean, because I mainly work with couples, at a practical level, every marriage has the same 3 problems. That's what I've learned. It's made me feel less alone.
All right. So just in case, what are that? Moving forward.
I'm not saying which one am I? The most common marital problems are sex, lack of. One person wants it more, one person doesn't want it at all. Generally, that's a big one. Money, one person doesn't spend too much, one person doesn't spend at all, or whatever. And the biggest one, the main problem on communication. It's how I see my role, I often describe my role is, let's just pretend you two are a couple, right? And if Dan is speaking French, you're speaking Spanish, and I'm the one that translates. But that's, you're a lot of times, it's just a massive communication issue, and people put stories onto what people say. So like, Dan might be like, I don't have $20. And you would say, well, he's broke. Whereas Dan, then he hasn't got the cash for him to get out $20. That's a very basic, very basic example. But that is what the main reason that people have arguments is because people don't ask for clarification and they don't ask what you mean. And they just hear words assign a meaning to it, and then get this.
So what are some of the tips? So given the fact that if you're a parent that's got someone that's going through school, or you're someone that's just left school, or you're currently in your career, to prevent you from hearing things, getting pissed off, and then making assumptions on what someone's saying, what are like some techniques or suggestions?
It's not a secret, just ask for clarification. And this is what I bang out to all my couples, to everybody. Just ask, right? So if someone says something that you're not sure about, or you don't understand and you're angry, if you've got a response and that's made you angry, sorry, can I just ask what it is exactly that you meant by that? Because my understanding is this, is that correct? And they'll either say, no, oh God, no, that's not correct, it's actually this. Or they'll say, yeah. And then you go, okay, well, I am. And then, but just ask. What you can never do is say, just go away and get angry. Just ask for clarification. Is this what you mean? Okay, it is. And then at least you know.
Yep.
But that'd be the biggest one. And that's the same in teaching as well. Like, ask for clarification. Don't be afraid. When I say for teaching, the same for parents with children. Don't be afraid to ask. What are you doing? What is the plan? What is next? Don't be afraid to ask. Don't hear so many parents go, well, I'm sure the teachers know best. I'm like, oh, I'm sure they do. But it's okay to ask them.
Yeah.
Just so you know. Because otherwise you might be talking, like we said earlier, you might be talking French and you're talking Spanish and nobody's getting anywhere.
Yeah. And I mean, I can speak from a high school perspective. There were kids that I'd only ever see 45 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to know your child, even as a primary school teacher who sees them for 8 hours a day. You're never going to know the kid in your class better than the families at home. So there's always things that they can bring in to support you in your teaching as a parent, always.
Well, I mean, 100%. And I probably, like, my parents were great at that. Like, and that's what my parents have taught me. But like, there's this one story, it is a joke in our family now. But so in the UK, you have to get a C in maths and English to be able to progress to A levels or anything, any kind of next level thing. You must have a C in maths and English, right? So the way that they set out the GCSEs, though, was that they had 3 tiered papers. They had higher tier, which you can get anything up to an A star, and intermediate, where you can get anything up to a B, or foundation, where you're capped at a D. Now, the foundation isn't fit for purpose because you need a C. What's the point of the foundation? You're going to have to redig it. So you can see where this is going. I was put in for the foundation, and my parents were. They're like, well, if you're predicting her of D, let her do the intermediate and get a D. What's the difference? The school said no. They tested me, and my parents were like, we want a meeting. And they pushed for a meeting. And they went in, had a meeting with the head of maths, my maths teacher. And my maths teacher said, well, we've assessed her as you wanted us to, and she didn't get the grades. She's not going to do it. We're not going to put her into we're not going to put her into intermediate. And she stood up as if to say the meeting's over. And my parents they sat down until she just had to sit back down. My parents were like, well, no, this is not over yet, because this is not good enough. And they were all talking about me as if I wasn't there, until the head of maths eventually just said, like, this is ridiculous. And he was like, Myfanwy, can you do this? And I said, I'm going to try my best. And I tried my best. And so that must have been like December. And then the exam, and I'd got a U, ungradable, in the December marks. And the exams were in May, and I worked, and I got that C.
Got a C?
I got a C. That was a grade I was most excited about. I remember getting my GCSE results and just couldn't care about the A's, whatever, scanning down. I rang my dad. I was like, you got a C in maths? And it was just like, that's like probably one of the best days of my life. And yeah, I did it. So maybe that's what I learned. You work hard every day for 6 months, you will get your, it wasn't an A, it wasn't a B, but it was a really big achievement for me.
But that's the thing with the idea. Loz and I often talk about success, like it looks very different for different people. For you, in that moment, it was getting that C, because what you're actually doing is like proving to yourself you could do with it.
Yeah.
And achieving it with lots of consistent hard work.
Yeah, and also just knock it off. I really didn't want to have to retake my maths GCSE. I didn't want to do that.
But also you had to fight to take it.
I had to, my dad get
Yeah.
But yeah, and they were the ones who paid for tutors. I was tutored twice a week, and they really fought for it. And I'll never forget. But that taught me a lot about my parents' love. Is they really had my back. And when I remember Miss Kirby, yeah, she stood up. She was very like, this is the way it is, blah, 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 and that she's not doing it. And she admitted it in a meeting, and this was her mistake. She said, we've got to think about the school results. So if they put me in for the intermediate and I'd got a D, but that was her mistake, because then the head of maths was like, whoa, no, we've got to think about the child as well. But
I've been in a similar meeting.
Yeah.
I'm being the person
Me too.
that's there, we go, whoa, no, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just, I did I do think back very fondly at her standing up and then awkwardly sitting back down with my parents.
So
That's not how
you said advocate.
Yeah.
That was one of the things you put in your pre-pod form about when it comes to trying to give advice and support to other people. I was thinking about that, and the question that jumped out to me is, so you've touched on this with this story. So when should a parent trust their instinct over what a school is saying?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because I've also been on the other side of it. And you do sometimes get some people you can't.
It's nuance, isn't it?
It is nuance. And I don't want it to I don't want to go out there and say like advocate and like undermine the teacher. I'm not saying that. I'm not.
Yep.
But that to me, that example I used seemed very logical. If I was going to get a D, I could get a D in the intermediate. So I would say stick to logic. If it seems logical, if you're seeming like you're asking for, and my parents weren't asking for me to take the height. Do you know what I mean? They were working within
in
the realistic realms. If you feel like you're working within the realistic realms of what the teachers are saying, and you do have to trust the teachers. My parents weren't disputing that I wasn't good at maths. They knew I was only ever going to get a C. They just wanted me to have a chance. And I think that's the difference. Be realistic, but make sure that your child has at least a shot. Don't just be fobbed off.
And is it also about listening to your story too? They were clear on what success for you would look like.
Yeah.
So being realistic, being aware if sometimes things are being pulled away with your child's not getting an opportunity to try and be included. And then there's also being really clear for you about what success looks like in that situation.
Yeah, 100%. Being realistic, I think. I mean, like, my parents knew that I wasn't good at science. Well, they weren't disappointed with the Ds. I'm like, great, good for you. That's success for you. But then, like, with my other grades, I was getting A's and B's and whatever. That's great, good for you. You've got to celebrate what your child is capable of and celebrate hard work. Don't just celebrate hard work. I hope I'm not putting that onto my kids. Celebrate hard work. Don't just celebrate the result. If someone works really, really hard, like I did for 6 months, the best I can get is a C, that should be celebrated.
Well, that was the most, you glowed and you did actually jump up on the couch. Not like Tom Cruise at Oprah, but jumped up just before. And there's the biggest smile we've had the whole time we've been chatting was when you were talking about a maths exam, and earlier you told us that you didn't really enjoy maths, and then you said it's the best there. Then it's one of the best days of my life.
I know, but it was one of the best days of my life. But I remember my maths teacher, she was a fierce woman as well. Like 6 months later, I bumped into her in a hallway and said to me like, "Oh, I can't believe you got a C in maths. Nobody thought you could do it." Nobody thought. I was like, hold on, do you really have to get the boot in? I think about that, when you're in the shower and you're getting angry and like, you should have said this. I should have said maybe you're a teacher.
Who do those comments serve? I don't understand. And Dan and I have spoken about this so many times as educators, the importance of the clean slate, the importance of taking a kid in the moment and just accepting them for who they are, rather than carrying these stories about particular students, taking things personally. Like, I remember I had an extra one day and I walked in. What's an extra? Sorry. So I was taking somebody else's class. The teacher was away. Sorry. And so I walked into this room. I did not know the class. And within 2 minutes, a kid walked up to me, called me the C word. Now, I could get very angry about that. But logically, this kid does not know who I am. I've done nothing at this point. I think I've taken the role and asked them to sit down. None of that is about me. And if we can actually remove ourselves, the personal, from things and look at things, as you said, logically, what's reasonable, what can we do in this situation, how can we work together? If you can remove that kind of defense, we can sort of create, I think, greater strides forward.
Yeah, I mean, that story reminds me of when I was a teacher. I had this one for Lenny. It was my first time teaching him. I didn't know he was neurodiverse. Anyway, so I can't remember what I was teaching last time. It might have been something, but he wanted to talk about Henry VIII, right? We weren't teaching about Henry VIII. But so he put his hand up and I remember my talk and I said, "Not now, Lenny, not now." And that was the wrong thing to say. He lost it, threw a chair. I was like, not happy. So obviously, sent him out of the class, called the head in, and Jim's like, "Oh, sorry, Lenny is neurodiverse. Like, he really can't stand being interrupted." I was like, "That's fine. Now I know." So for the rest of the year, every time he put his hand up to talk about Henry or Henry VIII or whatever, I'd just be like, "Okay, Lenny's going to talk to us now." I'd sit down and do his 5-minute spiel. I'd be like, "Thanks, Lenny." And then he'd go on. He never threw a chair again. Not once in ring bus. Not once. Because I know I'm the adult, and sometimes that you've got to adjust the way you're teaching to support the child rather than I could have been like within my right. Well, no, that's not what we're teaching. We're doing we're doing James the First, not Henry VIII. Let's stick to the topic. You're wasting all our time. No, it made him more comfortable, and then he would be able to get on with his work for the rest of the lesson. We never had one more incident. It was a great relationship. I don't know, some interesting stuff about Henry VIII.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I find myself often saying to either school leaders, educators, or parents is around this idea of like, we're the adult in the room. Like a lot of the time people say, oh, the kids just need to do it. It's like, well, so we're the adults. So we can adjust to best suit, because that's our role. We actually lead the room. And then we're trying to bring out the best in them. They can't always just have to adjust to, like, that's not fair. If you're thinking of that idea of sometimes kids like Lenny are being misunderstood, what would you say are the signs that a child might be misunderstood? Because listening to like language is really, really important. And then these labels that we then carry, we're misunderstood. So when you think back or thinking forward, what are the signs that a kid might be misunderstood?
Good question. I think, why are we using any sort of negative labels at all? Like, it's just not, like you said, what's that serving? Like, why am I being told that I'm lazy? Like, that's what as a teacher, I wouldn't say you are lazy. If there was a child that was underperforming or not being where they want to be, or not, I'd have a talk with them. What's going on for you? What are you finding hard? How can I help? Do you know how to study? Blah, 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 blah. I would come in. I don't understand why we can't come in solution focused rather than this is a problem. Well, yeah, I know it's a problem. You threw a chair. That seems like a pretty big problem. What are we going to do about it? Like, we can sit and complain about him being called a name or someone throwing a chair or till the cows come home, but it's not going to help anybody.
Yeah. So do you think, would it be fair to say, so if you start to notice changes in behaviour, disruptive behaviour,
changes in behaviour, outbursts. I'm kind of thinking of my son as well, like Morgan, who's autistic and ADHD. He outbursts, going quiet as well, but it doesn't look, not everybody is exactly the same, so you've got to know the child and learn the child. Like, so what it could be withdrawing, it could be being overexerted, it could be violence, it could be just being silly.
So it changes.
Changes, yeah. Or just, I would say every teacher should be, and every parent really should be taking the time to speak to each child about how they learn the best and what they enjoy about school, what they're getting out of it, and getting some teacher feedback.
I remember years ago speaking to, she's from America, but I think she was like a behaviourist, and often she would go in and go in to support neurodivergent students and then working out best practice. And her comment to me was, generally challenging behaviour boils down to two things, and again, general, an underdeveloped skill or an unmet need. So if you come back to those two things and we try and work out what it is, that's straight away going to put you on the front foot. I remember having a student in year 7 who would call out constantly, and it was getting to the point that actually it was impacting his social opportunities at school because people found him really difficult and irritating. And so I spoke to the mum and to the boy at parent-teacher interviews, and he really, really needed attention. There was some difficult things going on at home. Mum was beautiful, but there were some really difficult things going on at home. And he was craving attention, and he was doing it in really challenging ways. And so I said to him, I understand that this is what you need from your educator. These are the ways I'm prepared to give you attention. Does that sit well with you? And he was like, yeah, it does. So when I would disseminate information, I would then go and find him after, and we'd have a chat, just the two of us, while everyone else is kind of getting on. And he was happy with that. But it's about understanding what it is, communicating, as you said, and then showing up in the best possible way that you can with what you've got, right?
I think people sometimes think asking questions is rude, or like, they can't do that. But no, just ask. Always ask. Be it in your relationship, be it with your child, the school principal, just ask, and then at least you'll know. Operating in the dark is the most dangerous place you can operate.
But so, yeah, I'm learning from you today is like, just be clear.
Yeah.
When I say clarification, be clear. When you think of your mum and your dad, and also yourself, because it seems advocacy is a really strong thing within your family, when it's worked really well, I'm just thinking of the listener and just sort of like some really clear, practical takeaways. So when advocacy has worked really well for your child, and when you think of your mum and dad, the way they did it, what really helps with a really productive advocacy conversation?
Yeah, I would be more like my mum and dad and less a little bit like me, because I especially the poor Australians, I think they find me a bit direct, because I am quite a direct communicator and a little bit no nonsense as well. I I don't really want to hear problems. I only want to hear solutions. So I would be listen, then you can give your solution. But I would say what works well is, again, communication, asking for clarity, making sure that you're on the same page, not just assuming, never ever assume that what someone means. Find out what they mean and then take it from there. And then you're all on the same page. Respect for teachers as well. That's a big one. Like, don't go in assuming again that from your own experience in school where you didn't like teachers, whatever, they're all out to get you. Go in with respect, because ultimately teachers, it is a calling and they are doing it for the love of education. Mainly that's been my overwhelming experience with teachers and the love of the children. So going with clarity, going with respect, and also back on clarity. Always go in prepared with what you want and what you know that you're going to ask for. Always make notes before any meeting, and I've had many meetings for my son Morgan. I usually consult with my auntie Kay in the UK, who was a headmistress for a long time. I ring her and I say, well, what do I want? And what do I need to say? And we work out. So that just really helps, because once you have the ideas written down, you kind of know what your hard line is and what you're going to, what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept, especially. Not that it's a fatal, but I'm big on going in clear on what you want, and you can ask what you want. You 9 times out of 10 get to what you want.
And when we think of all that we've covered today, so one of the things that we do as we round out the conversations is we think of, so knowing that the listener is either someone that's got a young person in school, or, they're supporting someone, or they themselves are going through some sort of change. What haven't we asked you about that you think we should talk about that would help the listener?
So again, so you can think, well, you can tell I'm a therapist banging on about communication, but I would encourage any parent, especially of like a teenage child, it's probably the best time to talk to your child about their experience in education and what works for them, how they, rather than just getting on your kids like, you've got your RA work to do, go upstairs and read St. Mark's Gospel. My parents ever said that.
It's the best way to study. Yeah. That's just read it. Just read it.
Yeah, but I think people they think they're supporting their kids by being like, have you done your work? Staying on top of it. You've got your homework. Actually talk to them like, hey, do you know how to study? Like, what works for you? Are you a visual learner? Are you... And this information's you don't have to be in education to understand it. You've got the internet. You can Google, best way to help a child start and, go through.
There's actually really good questionnaires you can do that'll actually determine it for you too.
Exactly. I wouldn't just... My thing is I wouldn't just put all your faith in the teachers, because, yes, the teachers do care. They also have 30 other kids to care about, and it's not your child. So just do your part. Talk to your child. Find out what school's like for them. Find out what they think about education. Are they on top of it? Do they need help, support? Don't just assume that the teacher has it covered, because they will have it covered and they will be doing their best for their child, but they also have to have it covered for 30 others. So, or however many, if you're high school to 200.
Yeah.
So just have a chat. And then if your kid's all good, your kid's all good. But don't just get on them, do your work. Find out how it works.
Yeah, there's a guy called Ron Richard. I think he works out of Harvard Uni. He talks about the difference. I heard a quote from him, which was, learning's what we do for ourselves, work's what we do for someone else. So we try and shift in our home, such nerds. In our home, we talk about home learning, not the homework. So we don't try and say you need to do this because otherwise they're doing it for me, as opposed to well, what are you enjoying about this? What's something you want to try out? What's something you want to discover? We're big on because we're really mindful there's certain ways you want to practice skills, or you don't want to just sit down and do a worksheet, right? Unless there's an actual focus or a reason for doing it or something like that. So we'll play fluency and practice games. So we get decks of cards and play some really quick games. But the idea is it has to be quick and short and sharp, right? Deliberate practice, really quick and easy. They know what success looks like, what it doesn't look like, and then we move on. We don't sit there and just try and drill and kill just because some adults told them they have to go practice. Is that similar to how you guys approach it? Different? You're both giving me a quizzical look.
I'm just trying to think. I think I just try and find the joy. I went in very early on to my kids' teachers and just said, these readers are not... We're not
so bored.
We're bored. We are bored. My daughter brought... I'm not joking. And it's not the teacher. It was literally what was in the one of the books in the bin. She literally brought a book home about cardboard. I'm not joking. It was just in there. And I just think, I want you to read. I want you to build that skill, but I want it to be in a way that feels enjoyable. So I was pretty quick to say, can we do our own books and do our own thing? I've said similar thing. I've said to Dan before too, my son struggles to write for long periods. And when I assessed to work out whether it was actually a mechanics issue, and it's not, But when he's asked to write about his weekend, he writes one line and then the teacher's like, yeah, but what else? He's like, but that's all I did. Why would I write any more? That's it. So again, offering permission at school to really dig into his interest. If you want the skill, if you want him to demonstrate the skill, then you have to get him on the hook a little. Things like that is helpful. That's what we try and do.
It's nice examples of advocacy.
Yeah.
Do you know, you just remind me of something with my son about, and this is a key example of why talking to your children and advocating. So when we first moved here, I went back to London for a wedding, and Jason and the kids stayed in Australia. And while I was away, Morgan's teacher had said perhaps Morgan's really struggling with, he can't really hold a pen, and maybe he needs to see an OT.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're like, okay, great, yeah. So we took him off to an OT, and the OT was like, no, it's absolutely fine. It's got no issues at all. Okay, let's have a word with Morgan. So when I got back to London, I said to him, so I know my child. Then Morgan, what hand are you writing in at school? He's like, sometimes my left, sometimes my right. Like, oh, okay. Do you know that if you're right-handed, you only write with the right? I didn't know that. Got it. We never had any issues. No wonder his writing looked terrible. He might be right with his foot for half of it. But I
Just ask the question.
Yes.
Oh, what are you doing? Because I know my son. Just ask the question.
Yeah.
Don't just go blind faith.
I shouldn't say that. That's why I was mentioning before. Sorry, I didn't explain the tangent that happened in my head. When you said about find out what your kids are interested in, the reason we're playing those random card games is because our girl said, well, we want to get better at this. Yeah. So they had our second born wanted to really nail her 10s facts and up to 20. So we're like, all right, well, we know these different games because we spent the time to ask.
Yeah.
We then did the thing and we're like, but we want it to be short and sharp and fun, like that sort of thing. We want joy instead of just a maths worksheet. But I love that idea. Just ask a question. Hey, what's happening? What hand are you writing with?
Because you know your child. You know your child's quite. So you might not think to ask Morgan that if you were his teacher, but I would because I know my son.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a bit controversial. I'm not that bothered about homework in primary school. I'm the same as you. We don't really, the books that Killian's coming home, we just read together every night and I put that in the reader, and sometimes he reads, sometimes I read it only. That's great. I don't really think homework should be a thing. I think at home I want to teach them about compassion.
Yeah.
Sharing.
Yeah. But I also think too, if you're going to give homework, the kid actually needs to be really clear around what the purpose of it is.
Yes, I understand.
I think if you're just taking something home for the sake of to tick it off, I'm not big on that. Again, that's something that I would talk to the teacher about. What skill or what is the purpose behind this? Can I recraft it for our kids to teach the same thing or get the same outcome, but not make it so perhaps for them monotonous or arduous?
I mean, just talking to you, it's from my down, the pressure teachers are under. I do empathy for it. I mean, because I have been guilty of setting.
Of course, me too.
Because we were under so much pressure and we had to set a homework a fortnight, so it's a fortnightly timetable. I had 10 classes, 30 kids. Sometimes I'd be like, oh, God, I haven't set 8 days homework. Oh, word search. That's pointless. It's just because I had to do it. Because otherwise it was going to come down on me. And that wasn't pointless homework. Did they with me to do? But yeah, so I do have a lot of empathy, and I don't want to be I hope nobody listening is thinking getting fired up and being right, I'm going out of school, I'm going to fight with my kids' teachers about, that's not the purpose.
But how can we work together? I think that's what it's got to be.
Yes.
How can we work together? If this is because you know what, we're struggling at home to get this done. You're constantly chasing. No one's kind of getting what they want at this point. What are you after? What can I support you with? And go from there.
Well, and if anyone's got, they're struggling with school diaries, right, Laura, we've spoken a lot about this. The reason we have diaries, so I remember teaching grade 5, 6. The reason we have the school diaries, I'm not sure if this is relevant for the listeners, but listeners, I don't know if you've had the same experience too, but you actually got the diary to help kids learn organisational skills and actually build up some habits for that. It's not just so that you can write in a book for the teacher to sign. It's actually to get the kid to realise that I've got to build up some sort of consistent habit to help me be organised and work out, I actually can't do this thing because I've got family celebrations on the weekend and basketball grand. It's helping you start to time manage.
Do you think journals are doing that? Do you think diaries do?
No, well, we talk about with our kids, we're like, oh, this is why we actually is this going to help you do this? Because we're not writing it so that you can get the signature for your teacher. That's not the actual purpose. The purpose is to help you just start to be more organised. Is that something that you really want? And they're like, yeah, I want to be more. Great. Okay, so what do we need to do? Having the conversation, getting the clarity, getting out of the dark and into the light.
Yeah. It's not a religious cult.
Well, if you would like to join the cult, you can say no.
Yeah.
Myfanwy, thank you so much. You have brought a lot of light, got us out of the dark. And thank you so much. We started, when you think back to that conversation, so we started with like some pretty trying experiences that you had in school and all the way through this new pathway that you've created for yourself. So thank you so much for the way that you've shared all the experiences, your thinking, offering all that clarity. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on More Than a Score. If you know someone that might be similar or different to Myfanwy and have a very lovely name too, please feel free to reach out to us at morethanascorepod@gmail.com. And Laura, on the Instagrams, what are we?
More Than a Score Pod on Insta.
Perfect. Myfanwy, we do a bit of a high five. Do you feel like, have you been practicing your high fives?
I don't think need to practice.
Oh, okay. All right. Can we do what? We're going to go really close. I feel like you've got a good energy for this. Okay. There's a lot of pressure. We'll just miss.
I am dyslexic, so I don't have
That's all right. I'll adapt. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was good. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I pushed too hard.
That was good.
That was crazy. Bench 120 today, 110. I'm only 60 kilos. You're going to push me right.
One hand.